Hello all, I hope everyone is well and ready to listen to some new stories. Before I get into those stories, I did want to let everyone know though that you may or may not be hearing background noises that you wouldn't normally hear in my videos. A few months ago, new equipment was purchased, which is always exciting to be sure, but I wanted to update you all because this equipment is refurbished, so it's a bit older. It works well for what I need it to do, but it is quite a bit noisier than the laptop that I was previously using. So there's that disclaimer. Anything weird or any humming that you hear, if you hear it, it is the desktop setup that I am currently using. That said, let's not waste any more time here and get right into these demonic encounters. One in particular I think is absolutely true without a doubt, and I'll leave it up to you guys to decide which one you think that is. Feel free to take guesses in the comments, and if you're right, I will reply and let you know that you got it. Without further ado, don't forget to embrace the terror, and here we go. The paranormal has always gravitated toward me. Even my mom believes I have spirits following me around, and that I have since I was little. She says she's seen and felt them in every bedroom I've had. I'm a firm believer in God, and I don't know if that's relevant. But I do also think some people are naturally more susceptible to spiritual and demonic activity, no matter how devout in their faith that they are. I might seem crazy, and maybe I am. I just want clarity. I want to know if these things seem as sinister to you, listener, as they do to me. My boyfriend and I have been together for a year. I started spending more time at his house 8 months ago and moved in officially 4 months ago. He tells me that before I started coming around, things didn't happen that often, and that when they did, it was always something small, something easy for him to ignore, like shadows in the hallway, that kind of thing. After I moved in, it picked up. It was subtle at first, more frequent shadows moving out of the corner of our eyes, and then progressing up to things moving on their own. One day he was in the bathroom and a towel flew off the rack at him. There are no windows or vents in there, so it had to have been physically pulled. Then we started hearing each other's voices. I would hear him whistling when he wasn't home. He would hear me talking when I wasn't home. It wasn't too much longer after that we started hearing each other even when we were both at home. He was sitting right next to me one day, and I heard him say something. I asked him to repeat it, only for him to say that he had not spoken at all. That kind of thing happens to us both almost every day. I started doing some of my own research, and I also happened to stumble on the show Haunted on Netflix. I watched the episode about demonic entities that mimic. From what I've learned, only demonic entities can become powerful enough to mimic your voice, and the situation for those involved always gets worse as the entity grows stronger. A few things I read have said that if it gains enough strength, it can physically appear to you as another person. I think that it already looks like me. Our cat was in the hallway one day, and it nuzzled the air as if a hand were there. She meows at corners and empty spaces. The other night, I heard my voice say something from the living room. The dog went running toward it, running around playing as if I were in the room. Additionally, my boyfriend told me that he saw me in the kitchen while I was in the bedroom. He said it was only for a split second, but he was sure that he saw it. and he was positive that it was me. Weird things happen when I'm in the shower, especially when I'm home alone. I'll hear the front door open, followed by footsteps walking toward the bathroom. Then I'll get out to find the door locked and the house empty. A couple of weeks ago I was showering, and my boyfriend was in the living room waiting for me to get out. It's not uncommon for him to come into the bathroom while I'm in there to annoy me, so I wasn't shocked when I heard him walk up to the shower curtain. He called my name just on the other side of it, in an odd sing-song tone. I peeked out to see what he was up to. He wasn't there, and the door was locked. When I confronted him about it later, he promised that he had never moved from the couch. Both of us constantly feel like we're being watched, and there's a palpable, heavy sensation as if something energetically dark is looming over us. In particular, whenever we're sleeping. I can't sleep in the house alone, and the only room I feel safe in is the living room. We hear footsteps very frequently. It's almost like we can hear it every time it walks. I feel extremely targeted by this thing. It seems to mimic me and bother me the most. I kept waking up with huge bruises all over me, which has never happened to me before. My boyfriend is convinced that it's nothing, that I'm just sleeping roughly, but that is not the case, and I know it. Beds don't give you bruises. The whole thing feels like I'm in the middle of a horror film come to life to destroy mine. I genuinely don't know what to do at this point. The air here is oppressive. I'm terrified that bruises are going to turn into scratches, and scratches are going to turn into full-on attacks. I keep my Bible close and pray as often as I can. I've even thought about inviting a pastor to cleanse the house, but I'm afraid that the house might not be the problem. The problem might have come here with me. But like I said from the start, maybe I'm just crazy. When I was young, I was an atheist. I converted to the religion I now practice a couple of years ago, and ever since, I've been having frequent encounters with the unseen. It began with me traveling back to my homeland, where magic and supernatural encounters are ubiquitous. My aunt first relayed the story of someone in our family who practices black magic. As her story went, one day said person was making tomato sauce for everyone. My grandfather heard her chanting something under her breath. He didn't think much of it. She finished up, and later they packaged the sauce into jars. Weeks later, it was discovered that every single jar, when opened, had needles sitting atop the sauce. My aunt was known to participate in the occult from time to time, however, I will say that. I was also told of how she and her friends regularly visited a psychic. Back to my personal encounters, though. Those didn't start until after I went from being an atheist to a believer. It first started with my dreams. I would be speaking to someone in my dream, and suddenly their pupils would change and their voice would deepen, which I later learned are the two most obvious signs of possession. Anytime I went to sleep without saying a prayer first for protection, I was attacked. When this happened more than once, and then I soon after underwent sleep paralysis, I was fuming. I began launching verbal assaults at whatever it was. Then I went into the kitchen. My mom was in there, and only the stove light was on. She was standing next to the counter opposite the stove, as was I. We heard a loud click, and everything went dark. "Hey, why'd you turn the light off?" Mom asked. "I'm still in here." Neither of us were near the stove. That light switch requires a decent bit of pressure. There's no way that no one had physically touched it. That couldn't have happened on its own. Yet somehow, seemingly, it did. For a long time, nothing else happened. Until recently. A new activity I had undertaken was walking near the woods at night. They're right by my house. For 2 nights, I was gone on these excursions, and on those nights, my mother endured sleep paralysis. After both incidents, she saw a door. Behind that door was a figure in a black cloak. I found out that the place I had ventured to on those nights was once a mass grave. Bodies had been buried there, but were later exhumed. I know it's probably coincidence, but it doesn't feel that way. The craziest part of all, I still felt the urge to go deeper. I wanted to go into the woods. Something kept telling me that if I did, there would be no prayer that would protect me. When I was 13, I was in a really dark place. I was cutting, among other things, and had also begun dabbling in Satanism. I was always suspicious of the truth behind spirituality, however, so I never actually believed that there was anything to it. And she would also have premonitory dreams that did, in fact, happen in real life. My brother would sometimes see and dream about spirits in the house. I never knew what my special thing was, but my mom always warned me to not mess around with anything that could be tied to darkness, since I'm a quote-unquote energetic beacon. As much as she tried to protect me, though, I, of course, didn't listen. I bought myself a Ouija board with my Christmas money. I was in a terrible depression and therefore was the perfect energetic buffet for hungry spirits. Nothing happened for a week after I started using it. I was playing alone and kept rushing the process, doing everything wrong, and I do mean that. Ouija board use in and of itself is frowned upon even by experienced practitioners, and everything that those same experienced practitioners specifically warn against doing or not doing with a Ouija board, I'm guilty of it all. Eventually, I did actually attempt to follow the directions and call out. I waited for a moment after doing so. The temperature in the room dropped dramatically, and sound became dampened, as if I had put in noise-canceling earpods. Then, the planchette moved to yes. Even that was all much more than I was mentally prepared for. I freaked out, then closed the session, offering up a weak, okay, goodbye. Apparently, this made the spirit angry. The temperature dropped even more, and all the hair on my body stood up. I glanced at my mirror across the room and saw a dark figure lurch toward me with open arms. I ran out of the room and tried to tell my father and stepmom what had just happened. They laughed and said I was being ridiculous. Over the next few days, I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I cried uncontrollably and constantly felt sick at my stomach. My father kept saying that he didn't believe in that type of thing, but he still made me take the board home to my mother with me when I left. My mom immediately knew something was off. I was too afraid to tell her the truth, so I kept it a secret. The entire week, we all had strange dreams. The same dream. We dreamed of a woman with an unhinged jaw. She screamed and screamed, but no sound came out. We would all wake up at the same time of the night, every night. We had dogs, and they would run from me or hide under furniture when I entered the room. My mom started throwing things out that she felt might have any sort of negative energy tied to them that could have been brought into the house. And all the while, I kept getting worse. After a fight about why I hadn't eaten anything in a week, I finally fessed up. I brought the board to her and explained everything. She wasn't mad, more relieved than anything, since she knew how to fix it. From there, she set a safe environment to cleanse me. Everyone left the house but me, her, and my stepdad. She poured a salt circle around us and the board, did candles and holy water, the whole thing. She and I held our hands on the planchette. The spirit was going wild, trying to force the planchette off the board, counting backwards, going to random letters. My stepdad was on the outside of the circle telling the spirit to leave our house and to leave me alone. Eventually, the planchette took a 5-minute break from its antics. In the silence, waiting for a sign, my stomach rumbled. For the first time in almost 2 weeks, I had an appetite, and it was a type of hunger I have never felt before. I ate until my stomach looked abnormally bloated compared to my 13-year-old body. I've never felt quite the same. My mom said throughout the week it was happening that she couldn't feel my presence, as if my energy had been muted. Since my experience, I've thrown out everything that reminded me of it or that made me worry it might happen again. Still to this day, though, if I'm depressed, I'll see a shadow figure out of the corner of my eye or in the corner of a dark room. It could just be my paranoia. What do you think?